Maya woke before the sun rose. She lived with her grandmother in a small room at the edge of the city. Their home was one of many rooms in a quiet shelter run by kind people who cared for children who had nowhere else to go. Every morning Maya slipped out of the thin blanket that smelled of soap and hope. She tiptoed past her grandmother's bed so she would not wake her. Outside, the sky was still dark, but Maya felt a spark of courage inside her small heart. She washed her face in a basin of cool water and brushed her tangled hair, wishing it looked neat and smooth like the hair of other girls she saw walking to school. Sometimes Maya sat by the window and watched fathers drop their children off. At school, they held hands, laughed together, and walked side by side. Maya closed her eyes and imagined what it would feel like to hold a father's hand. She dreamed of someone to walk her to class, someone to play catch with in the park, someone to whisper, "I'm proud of you," when she showed him her drawings. But every time she opened her eyes, she was still at the shelter with her grandmother, who did her best but was tired from work. Her grandmother, Ima, had raised Maya since she was a baby. Maya did not remember her parents, only the stories Amma told, how her mother sang lullabies and her father made her laugh with funny faces. Amma wiped away tears when she spoke of them. Maya felt sad for her grandmother and wanted to give her a reason to smile. She tried to help by sweeping the floor or folding blankets, but she felt the ache inside her own chest. A child's longing for a father's love. In another part of the city, Alexander Reed prepared for a very different day. He stood in front of a tall mirror in his penthouse apartment, straightening his crisp white shirt and adjusting his dark tie. Alexander was the chief executive officer of Apex Innovations, a billion-dollar company that made technology no one could imagine without. He lived alone in a glass building that touched the sky. His life was full of board meetings, earnings, reports, and high-end dinners. On the surface, he had everything: money, power, respect. But in quiet moments, he felt a question bubble up inside him, one he had not answered since he was a lonely child. What does it mean to care for someone? Alexander's routine was precise. He left his apartment at exactly 8 o'clock, greeting the doorman with a nod. He stepped into a sleek black car that took him to his office downtown. Along the way, he thought of the day ahead, a charity luncheon to benefit homeless children. The event was important. It would bring in large donations and strengthen the company's image. Alexander planned to give a short speech about corporate responsibility and innovation. He knew his speech would draw applause. He knew his name would appear in newspapers. But he did not know that what happened at that luncheon would change his view of life forever. In the grand lobby of the company's headquarters, staff bustled back and forth. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light on polished marble floors. Flowers in tall glass vases filled the air with a faint scent of lilies. Rows of tables curved around the room, draped in white cloth. Donors and guests in elegant dresses and suits took their seats. Waiters carried trays of tiny sandwiches and fruit tarts. The mood was polite and formal, but it held a sense of promise. Money to help children, smiles to win support, applause to honor generosity. Maya and her grandmother arrived hand in hand. Amma held Maya's small hand tightly, guiding her past the gleaming tables. Maya wore her best dress of faded pink that had been given to her by a volunteer. She smoothed the fabric with trembling fingers. Her heart pounded as they passed under the towering columns. She felt out of place among the velvet-clad guests, but she believed in the idea of magic. She believed that this day might bring something wonderful. At the front of the room, Alexander stepped to the podium. He spoke about the importance of giving back. His voice was clear and steady. He thanked the donors. He praised the efforts of the shelter where Maya lived. He spoke of hope. His words earned polite applause. Then came the moment of the meet and greet. Guests were invited to approach the stage, shake hands, and share a brief word with the CEO. Volunteers guided children forward first, so they could meet the man who had promised to help them. Maya waited in line, eyes wide, when she reached the front. She saw Alexander's calm face up close. His dark hair was smooth, his suit perfect. He offered his hand. Maya took it but did not speak. Instead, she looked at him with all the hope she could hold. Around them, people watched silently. Alexander knelt on one knee to meet her at eye level. Maya opened her mouth and, in a small, confident voice, said, "Will you be my dad for one day?" A hush fell across the room. Mouth stayed closed. Chairs scraped softly as guests leaned in to see. Alexander felt a shock in his chest. He studied Maya's big brown eyes. She waited, her small hand still in his. Walls Alexander built around his heart cracked ever so slightly. He had no words ready. He had no lesson prepared for a question like this. He only had a child's pure wish, holding out hope. Outside, the late morning light filtered through the tall windows. The flowers on the table seemed to lean forward, as if they wanted to hear the answer. Maya held her breath. Alexander sat, still for a heartbeat longer, caught between the life he knew and the life he might choose to live. Every eye in the room was on them as he lifted his gaze to meet hers. And in that silent moment, two Livses and her stood on the edge of change. Alexander stayed still for a long moment, his mind racing like a car with its engine running too fast. All around them, the polished floors and glass walls seemed to fade away. The soft chatter of guests, the distant clink of silverware, and the hum of the air conditioner washed out as he looked into Maya's hopeful eyes. She held his hand tightly, and in that small grip he felt a sudden warmth, as if her trust lit something inside him he thought he had lost long ago. He wondered, could one promise change everything? He took a slow breath and knelt down so his face was level with hers. "Why would you want me to be your dad?" he asked gently. His voice was lower now, carrying a softness he never used in boardrooms or at charity galas. Maya's eyes grew even larger. She blinked once, twice, then answered in a tiny voice that surprised even her. "Hey, I want someone to walk beside me, just for a day. I want to know what it feels like." She paused and her lips trembled. "Grandmother loves me, but she is tired. I've never held hands with a father, never heard him say he is proud. I just wish." Alexander closed his eyes for a heartbeat and saw a memory of himself at 8 years old. His mother, tired from work, tucking him into bed, her soft humming fading as she left. His small hands reaching for his father long gone. He felt then how much he had missed, and how he had built walls around his heart to keep pain out. He opened his eyes at Maya's face, now bright with hope. He could not say no. He placed his free hand over hers and squeezed. "Okay," he whispered. "I will be your dad for one day." A hush fell instantly. Chairs scraped back, and a gentle gasp rippled through the guests. His assistant, standing at the edge of the room, froze with her notebook in hand. Board members exchanged surprised looks. Cameras flashed from cell phones. Yet in that moment, none of the formality mattered. His single word had given Maya something she had only dared to dream of. Maya's face lit up in a smile so wide it seemed to glow. She let go of his hand and threw her arms around his neck. He hugged her back, awkward at first, feeling the weight of his own life settle against him. People clapped softly, some cheering, others wiping tears. Alexander felt warmth bloom in his chest, a strange but welcome feeling he had not known in years. He stood, gently lifted Maya's hand, and guided her back to her grandmother. Her grandmother, with surprise and relief on her face, gathered Maya into a tight embrace. Ima's eyes shone with tears, but she managed a small laugh. "Thank you," she whispered to Alexander. He nodded, uncertain what to say. Etiquette had no guide for this. Then he remembered the schedule on his phone. It was full. Very full. But he knew he had to clear it. Turning to his assistant, he said, "Call off my meetings tomorrow morning. I need the time." She looked shocked but nodded quickly, tapping on her phone. Alexander knew this would cost him. His investors expected him at a breakfast meeting. His board wanted to finalize a new deal, yet none of that felt as urgent now. He felt a pull toward something truer than profit or prestige, kindness. Later that evening, after the luncheon ended, Alexander found himself back in his office alone. He stared at the empty chairs around the conference table he had just used.
Ow!
He thought of the power they represented, the billions in contracts they signed. But he thought more of Maya's face, shining with hope. He opened his laptop and began typing a letter to the shelter's director. I would like to spend tomorrow morning with Maya. Please send me her schedule and a list of her favorite places. He paused and reread his words. It sounded strange, almost foolish, but he smiled as he hit send. He closed the laptop and looked around at the sleek office, the awards on the shelf, the city lights outside the window. It all felt less important. Now, a new question formed in his mind. What did it mean to truly live? Meanwhile, Maya lay in her small bed that night, her blanket wrapped around her like a cape. She could hardly sleep. Every few minutes she whispered, "Tomorrow, tomorrow I will have a dad." She imagined her new father waking up early, driving through the quiet streets in his black car, coming to pick her up.
Ow.
She pictured him kneeling, to tie her shoelace, walking with her hand in his, telling her jokes until she laughed so hard she cried. Her heart felt light and full at the same time. Her grandmother watched Maya from the doorway. She saw the excitement shining in her granddaughter's eyes and placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "Rest now, little one," she said softly. "Tomorrow will be bright." Maya snuggled into the pillow, but the moment she closed her eyes, she saw Alexander's kind face. She wondered what his home would be like. Did he have children? Did he own toys? Would he smile when he saw her? Sleep finally came when dawn began to glow. At 7 the next morning, Alexander's car rolled up to the shelter in front of Maya's small room. A black sedan with tinted windows and polished chrome. The driver opened the door. Alexander stepped out, dressed in a simple shirt and chinos, leaving his suit jacket folded on the seat. He held a small bouquet of daisies, chosen for their brightness and cheer. He walked up the steps and took a steadying breath before knocking. Maya, already up and waiting by the window, raced to the door. She threw it open and saw Alexander standing there with the flowers. She gasped and dropped her blanket. He held out the daisies and knelt down again. "For you," he said. "Happy day." Maya took the flowers and placed one behind her ear. She smiled with a mix of shyness and joy. He extended his hand. She took it and almost skipped past him, her pigtails bouncing. Her grandmother stood in the background, tears in her eyes and a small smile on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered again. Alexander nodded, feeling the weight of gratitude. He knew this day would be more than an event on his calendar. It would be a journey into a new way of living. He held Maya's hand, and together they walked into the morning light, two people from different worlds bound by a promise that would change both their lives forever. They left the shelter hand in hand and walked to the black car waiting at the curb. Maya's small hand felt warm in Alexander's. He had folded his suit jacket in the back seat and now wore a soft blue shirt. Sleeves rolled up at the elbows. The morning air smelled fresh, carrying hope on its gentle breeze. Maya pressed her face against the open window for a moment, feeling the air rush past her cheeks. Then she looked back at Alexander and said, "Where are we going first?" "Road here," smiled and started the engine. "I thought we'd get breakfast at your favorite place." Maya's eyes lit up. She knew this tone, a low, kind voice that meant he was listening. The car glided through quiet streets. Every so often they passed families walking to school or neighbors watering front gardens. Maya pointed at a row of bright tulips. "Are purple, but I like yellow best," she said. Alexander nodded and made a mental note to plant yellow flowers in his own. Home one day, soon they arrived at a small diner with red stools at the counter and a sign that read "Mom's Pancakes." Inside, the silver tiles on the walls shone under soft yellow lights. The smell of syrup and frying bacon filled the air. Maya climbed onto a stool and swung her legs, giggling when they swung too far. Alexander pulled out the stool next to her and sat down. A waitress with gentle eyes came over and asked what they wanted. Maya ordered chocolate chip pancakes and strawberry milk. Okay. Alexander chose plain pancakes with blueberries and black coffee, his usual choice. They waited, talking. Quietly, Maya told him about her school, about her favorite teacher, Miss Lena, who read stories with funny voices. Alexander asked questions: what story she liked best, what made her laugh. Maya thought for a moment and said, I like the one about the talking cat who solves mysteries. She leaned closer and whispered, I want to solve mysteries when I grow up. Alexander laughed softly and said, I think you already are solving a big mystery, how to make a CEO care about a little girl. Maya covered her mouth in surprise and then giggled. Their food arrived on round plates. The pancakes were piled high, warm and fluffy. Maya's eyes grew wide and she took a big bite, syrup dripping down her chin. Alexander handed her a napkin and said, There you go, detective. Patted her chin and laughed, wiping the syrup away. She offered him some of her strawberries, but he shook his head, teasing, No. You need all the power of those strawberries for our adventures. Maya beamed. She felt safe and happy in this moment. When they finished eating, Alexander paid the bill. Maya tried to help, reaching for a few bills, but he gently closed her hand and said, Today's my treat. She nodded and gave him a shy smile. They stepped back into the car and drove toward the city center. At Apex Innovations headquarters, the lobby felt different in the daylight. The bright sun poured through large glass windows. Potted plants lined the walls and the sound of footsteps echoed on the shiny floor. Maya looked around in wonder. It's like a giant castle for ideas, she said. Alexander chuckled. Yes, it is. He led her past security, and the guard recognized him. They waved and let him pass. Maya walked beside him, her small shoes clicking softly on the floor. They rode the elevator up to the top floor, where the view of the city sprawled like a map beneath them. Alexander pressed a button to open the glass doors to his private office. Inside, there were shelves filled with books, awards in glass cases, and a large desk stacked with papers. Maya's eyes darted from the tall windows to the leather chairs. She walked over to a low table where a stack of children's books lay. Alexander picked one up. Would you like me to read to you? Leah nodded eagerly and climbed onto one of the big chairs. Alexander sat across from her, holding the book open on his lap. The story was about a brave little mouse who traveled far from home to help a friend. As Alexander read, his deep voice changed for each character. A squeaky mouse, a gruff owl, a gentle deer. Maya's face changed with each character's emotion. Her eyes widened at surprise. Her lips curved in a smile at a joke. When the story ended, Maya clapped softly. Again, she said. Alexander laughed and began the next story. For a while, they sat together like storytellers in a cozy room. Then he set the book aside and said, How about you show me something you like to do? Maya thought for a moment. She pointed at a stack of colored pencils on the desk. Alexander picked up a pencil and asked, Do you like to draw? Maya nodded and slid down from the chair, grabbing a piece of paper. She drew two figures, one small, one tall, holding hands. The sun shone above them, and a heart floated between their hands. She handed the drawing to Alexander. He studied it, his eyes soft. You made this? He asked. Maya nodded proudly. He placed the drawing on his desk where he could always see it. Next, Alexander showed her something he rarely revealed, the big red button next to his desk. It was bright and shiny, marked emergency only. Maya's eyes grew huge. What does it do? She asked. Alexander winked. I have no idea, he said. Maya pressed her finger lightly on it, pretending to worry. Alexander grabbed her hand and laughed, lifting her onto his lap. Don't worry, he said. It only calls the cleaning robot. Maya giggled at the idea of a robot arriving to clean his office. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the office floor. Maya met a few of Alexander's colleagues. She introduced herself shyly. Hi, I'm Maya, the CEO's daughter for a day. Each person smiled and greeted her warmly. One woman offered her a cup of apple juice. Another man showed her a model airplane on his desk. He told her, This is my dream, to build real ones someday. Maya asked him to sign her drawing so she would always remember this day. Signed it with a flourish, and Maya beamed with pride. As noon approached, Alexander stood and stretched. Maya noticed how tense his shoulders had become during meetings earlier in the week before her arrival. Now they were relaxed, his smile more genuine. He turned to Maya and said, Shall we head out for a little fresh air? Maya nodded vigorously. Outside, they walked to the nearby city park. The grass was green and soft, dotted with dandelions and daisies. Children ran around, some flying kites, others playing tag. Maya slipped off her shoes and wiggled her toes in the grass. Alexander followed suit, removing his dress shoes and rolling up his chinos. He knelt down and said, "I haven't done this in years." Maya took his hand and led him toward a swing set. They each climbed onto a swing. Maya pumped her legs and flew forward, her hair streaming behind her. Alexander pushed gently, then harder, until Maya laughed with delight. The swing rose high, and Maya closed her eyes, feeling free. Alexander watched her face, his heart swelling with something he couldn't name but felt deeply. He remembered being a boy, pushing himself on swings until the world blurred around him. When they grew tired of swinging, they wandered toward a small pond where ducks floated on the water. Maya picked up a crumb from her pocket saved from her breakfast stand, tossed it to the nearest duck. Alexander bent down to pick a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. Maya clapped each time the stone hopped. They raced to see who could skip more stones. Alexander won by one skip, but he gave Maya the honor of declaring the champion. She raised her arm and shouted, "I win." Both laughed and high-fived two hands, one small and one large. As the sun climbed higher, they sat on a bench under a wide oak tree. Alexander handed Maya a cone of vanilla ice cream from a nearby cart. The ice cream melted quickly in the warm air. Maya licked the cone, her tongue turning pink with the sweet treat. Alexander watched, feeling content. He leaned back and took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the day fill him. Maya turned and looked at him, a question in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Alexander felt tears prick his eyes, but he blinked them back, put a gentle arm around her shoulders and said, "You're very welcome, Maya. I'm the one who should say thank you." Maya tilted her head. "Why?" she asked. He smiled and said, "Because you taught me how to be happy again." Maya looked up at him and smiled wide. In that moment, neither noticed the time passing. Two hearts, once lonely, were finding new joy in simple things: pancakes, stories, swings. The day was still young, but both knew that these shared moments were the true treasures. As they sat there, the world around them hummed with life children playing, birds singing, leaves rustling. Maya leaned against Alexander, trusting him completely. He stroked her hair and felt at peace. He realized that this day was only the beginning of their adventure together, and in that gentle afternoon light, both understood that sometimes the smallest hands could guide the greatest hearts toward what truly matters. They walked back toward the shelter as the sky turned soft shades of pink and orange. Maya skipped beside Alexander, her small hand tucked in his larger one. The air felt gentle, carrying the sound of distant laughter from children playing nearby. Alexander felt a tender ache in his chest. The day had been full of light and joy, but now it settled into something deeper: quiet space for truth. When they reached the front door, Maya let go of Alexander's hand and paused. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening as if they carried tiny lamps inside. He crouched down so his face was level with hers. "Thank you for today," she whispered. Her voice trembled. He smiled and brushed a stray curl from her face. "Neither will I," he said softly. Inside, their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. The volunteers had finished for the day, and the shelter's lights were dimmed. In the common room, Amma waited by a small table piled with bowls of soup and plates of bread. She looked up and gave a warm smile when she saw them. "Welcome home," she said, her voice tired but kind. Maya ran into her grandmother's arms. Alexander stood behind them. Pausing to watch the love between grandmother and granddaughter, Amma set a bowl of soup in front of Maya and another in front of Alexander. Steam curled up from the warm liquid, and the scent of vegetables and herbs filled the air. Maya dug in with a spoon, her hunger returning after the afternoon's treats. Alexander sipped his soup and listened as Amma asked about the day. Maya spoke quickly, her words tumbling out like bright beads on a string. the pancakes, the swings, the ice cream that melted too fast. Amma laughed softly and said, "I'm so glad you had a good time, Maya." After dinner, they moved to a corner of the common room. The lights were softer here, and a few children sat reading or drawing. Maya curled up on a small couch, her legs tucked under her. Alexander sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Maya took a deep breath and looked up at him. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. He nodded, giving her his full attention. Maya's voice was small. "I'm happy," she said, "but I have a fear." She paused, her hand gripping the couch cushion. "I'm scared that everyone I love will go away one day. My parents are gone, and I worry my grandmother will not be here forever. And now, I am scared I will lose you too." She looked at him with wide eyes. "I know you are not my real dad. Maybe tomorrow you will go back to your world and forget me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. Alexander's heart tightened. He reached out and held her hand. He remembered that same fear from his childhood, the fear that the people he cared for could disappear. He swallowed, his throat dry. Then he spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Maya, I will not leave you," he said. "Not today, not tomorrow." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When I was a child, I felt the same way. My mother did her best, but she had to work so much that I felt alone. I built walls around my heart so I would not feel the pain of loss again. But those walls also kept me from feeling joy." Maya leaned closer. Alexander continued, "Meeting you today showed me how much I gave up when I hid behind those walls. You helped me break them." He took a steady breath. "I promise you this. I will be here for you whenever you need me. I will come back. Not just for today, but again and again. I will help you with your homework, listen to your stories, and cheer you on when you try new things. I will be your friend, your guide, and your seer dad, in every way I can." He looked into her eyes. "You are not alone." Maya stared at him, her tears shining like drops of light. Then she threw her arms around his neck. Alexander wrapped his arms around her, feeling the soft weight of her head against his shoulder. In that hug, he felt a warmth that outshone any boardroom victory or stock market gain. He felt home. They stayed that way for a moment before Amma gently cleared her throat. Maya pulled back and wiped her eyes. She turned to her grandmother and smiled. Amma nodded, her own eyes moist. She placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder and said quietly, "Thank you for seeing her, truly seeing her." Alexander bowed his head. "No," he replied softly. "Thank you. She helped me see what I lost." Later, Alexander found himself back in his apartment, but it felt empty. The city lights blinked through the window. He closed the door and leaned against it, thinking of Maya's promise. He opened his phone and scrolled through his calendar. Morning meetings, board calls, travel plans all lined up like dominoes. Waiting to fall, began deleting events, one by one, until the morning was clear. Then he sent a message to Amma. "I'd like to visit Maya again tomorrow morning. Let me know what time works for you." He hit send and placed the phone on the table. He walked to the balcony and looked out at the city. The streets below still buzzed with life. He closed his eyes and let the night air wash over him. His chest felt lighter. He thought of Maya's smile, of the way she believed in him. He realized that his life's work needed a new purpose, to use his time and resources to serve something greater than profit. He made a silent vow to himself. Never again would he let work keep him from the people who truly mattered. Back at the shelter, Maya lay in her bed, clutching a small teddy bear. She traced the bear's stitched eyes with her finger and whispered, "Good night, Daddy." She closed her eyes and drifted into the deepest sleep she had known in years. The next morning, Alexander arrived exactly at the time Amma suggested. This time he brought a small backpack filled with books, colored pencils, and cups of hot chocolate with marshmallows, Maya's new favorite. When Maya opened the door, she gasped. "You came back?" she exclaimed. Alexander knelt and smiled. "I told you I would," he said, as they set off for another day of small adventures. Neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold, but they both carried with them a promise forged in honesty and hope. Maya believed in the father who chose her. Alexander believed in the little girl who healed his heart, and in the gentle morning light they walked together toward a tomorrow built on trust, love, and the courage to keep promises. They walked out of the shelter that morning with a lightness in their steps. Maya held Alexander's hand as they climbed into his car, just like the day before. She wore a bright yellow dress that made her look like a small ray of sunshine. Alexander smiled when he saw it. He had brought a small backpack filled with picture books, colored pencils, a gentle stuffed bear that Amma had knitted for Maya. He also carried a form he had drafted overnight, a simple letter that asked the shelter's director for permission to start a weekly program. He called it Dad for a day, and he hoped it would let other children find the same comfort he offered Maya. They drove to the shelter's meeting room, where tables and chairs were set for a small group of children. Few volunteers guided Maya and Alexander to the front. Maya's face glowed as she waved to the other children. Alexander felt his heart beat fast in a good way. He had given many speeches in large halls, but this was different. Here, every face in the room mattered to him. He bent down and whispered to Maya, "Are you ready?" Maya nodded and took a deep breath. He began by telling the children about his promise to Maya. He said that he learned something important, that kindness can grow into something big when one person takes a chance. Then he asked the children if any of them wanted someone to share a story, or play a game, or simply listen. Hands shot up. Tiny voices piped up. "Me. Will you read to me? Can we play blocks?" Alexander smiled and worked his way. Around the room, he sat with a little boy named Carlos, who loved rockets. Together they built a model from colored blocks. He read a picture book to a shy girl named Lena and helped her color the drawings. Whenever he looked up, Maya was there, helping other children, offering crayons or a tissue if someone felt sad. Alexander saw how well she fit into this new world, and his chest warmed. When the hour ended, the volunteers clapped softly. Alexander thanked them and told the director he would return next week. The director, with tears in her eyes, said, "Thank you for seeing these children as people who need love, not just data on a page." Alexander nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He picked up Maya's hand and promised, "We will come back every week." Later that day, Alexander returned to his office. The city skyline glowed under the afternoon sun. He sat at his desk and thought of the future he wanted. He realized he needed to change his company's culture, too. He drafted a memo to his leadership team, beginning next month. "We will give all employees 1 paid hour each week to mentor at local shelters or schools. We will call it Time to Care." He paused and looked at the empty conference room across the hall. In that quiet moment, he felt hope bloom like a flower in spring. He clicked send and closed his laptop. Over the next few weeks, Maya and Alexander met every Saturday morning. They went to parks, libraries, and art classes. Maya introduced him to her friends at the shelter. She showed him the colors she used in her paintings and taught him to play hopscotch. Alexander helped with math puzzles, cheered when children scored goals in soccer games, and even learned to bake cookies with a volunteer named Rosa. Each week, he felt more alive. He noticed that his sleep was deeper and his thoughts clearer. He smiled at work more often, and his employees noticed. They began sharing their own stories of volunteering. Some brought photos of children they had helped. Others planned fundraisers for the shelter. Alexander watched this change with pride and a quiet joy. One afternoon, Maya ran up to him with a certificate in her hand. It was from her school for Most Improved Reader. She pressed it into his hand, her eyes shining. "I could not have done it without you," she said. He knelt and hugged her. "You did this, Maya," he told her. "Only gave you a little help." She shook her head. "Gave me more than help," she replied. "You gave me belief." Alexander felt tears in his eyes. He lifted her chin and said, "Then we helped each other." As months passed, the Dad for a Day program grew. Other executives joined. They brought gifts of books, bikes, and clothes. They sat with children during meals and read bedtime stories. The program expanded to 2 more shelters in the city. The board of Apex Innovations recognized the change. They praised Alexander for leading with his heart as well as his mind. He stood before them at a special meeting and said, "Our greatest value is not in the products we sell, but in the lives we touch." His words were met with applause, more sincere than any he had ever heard in a boardroom. At home, Alexander's life had shifted. He returned to his apartment each evening with sketches and drawings from Maya and other children. He pinned them on a large bulletin board in his living room. The walls no longer felt bare. The city lights outside still called to him, but he no longer craved the view as his only reminder of success. Now his view was filled with simple gifts of love and creativity. On Maya's 9th birthday, Alexander and Amma threw a small party at the shelter. They decorated the common room with balloons and streamers. Children sang a happy song. Maya's eyes grew wide when she saw a chocolate cake with 9 candles. She squeezed Alexander's hand and whispered, "Thank you for making today special." He ruffled her hair and said, "Nothing is more special than you." After the song, they played games. Alexander and Maya teamed up for a 3-legged race. They stumbled and laughed, almost falling, but kept going until they crossed the finish line. Children cheered. Alexander lifted Maya into his arms and spun her around. She giggled, and he felt a joy deeper than any deal he had ever closed. The party wound down. Amma pulled Alexander aside. "You have given Maya more than you know," she said. "She has learned to dream again." Alexander looked at Maya, who was handing out cupcakes to her friends. He felt a swell of pride and love.
Ow.
"I have learned to dream again, too," he replied. That evening, after the guests left, Alexander and Maya sat together watching the city lights. Maya leaned against him and yawned. He wrapped his arm around her and said, "Tomorrow is another day of adventures." Maya looked up and smiled sleepily. "I can't wait," she whispered. Weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. Alexander's life was no longer the narrow path of meetings and profit margins. It was wide, filled with stories and laughter. He found balance between work and heart.